Hello everyone, my name is Edna Njeri. Welcome back to my channel. I decided to start a new series where we get ready together as I talk about different topics around self-development, self-improvement, mindset, and maybe even productivity. And so for today's video, I'm going to be talking about shadow work, and we're going to be creating this look. So if you want to see how I created this look and learn a bit more about shadow work, then keep watching. Okay, so let's get right into it. I already did my soap brows. Ow. Soap brows have been saving my life. I don't know how I lived without them. One of my neighbor's houses is being renovated, so I apologize for the noise. I think I first heard about shadow work probably on a podcast, but since then I've watched multiple YouTube videos about the topic and people who've documented themselves doing shadow work, and so I've learned a bit about it over time. I think a good place to start is understanding what even is your shadow self. Your shadow self is basically all the parts of yourself that you don't want to proudly claim. You consider that part of yourself to be undesirable or weak or dark, so maybe that's why you try to hide it and you don't consider it desirable. The term was made popular by a Swiss psychiatrist called Carl Jung, and he referred to it as the uncivilized and primitive side of human nature. And he believed that in order for us to become fully integrated humans, then we need to be able to see our shadow selves because it's a part of us. You can't deny it. While studying and writing about the shadow self, Carl came up with two archetypes: the persona and the shadow. An archetype is like a very typical example of something. For example, the hero archetype. Usually, when we're talking about a hero, there'll be certain elements that will apply to almost all heroes. They'll usually have an origin story. They were just an ordinary person, and then this thing happened, and that was their call to adventure. Usually, most hero stories follow that sort of format, and that's what an archetype means, basically. So he came up with two archetypes: the persona and shadow. So the persona is referred to as our ideal selves, how we would like to be seen in the world. And it's kind of funny because the origin of the word persona is a Latin word that means mask. So it's sometimes how we want to be seen to the world and how we want to present ourselves in the world is sort of the mask we wear in our day-to-day lives. And then on the flip side, the shadow is the archetype that forms part of our unconscious mind, where all our repressed ideas, our embarrassing fears, sorry about that. So I was saying our shadow selves are comprised of our repressed ideas, our embarrassing fears, desires, our perversions. That's what Carl defined the shadow self as being made up of. So when we look at both of these archetypes, we are naturally more aware of our personas. But in order to become more whole and become more balanced, then we need to work to become aware and more understanding of our shadow selves. So shadow work is a way for you to just become more whole and balanced as a person. Shadow work is the process of exploring your shadow side with the aim of self-development and growth. The definition I got is shadow work is the process of working with our shadow selves to eradicate their negative effects in our lives and to integrate the separate parts of ourselves into one whole. You might be sitting there thinking, why do I even need to do shadow work? What's the point? Well, let me tell you what the point was for me from my perspective. The most important one was the fact that even if you repress this side of yourself, it will never go away. And in fact, if you think about it, repressing it only gives it more power over you. Because if you're not addressing something, it creates more chaos in your life. You're just likely to be projecting more because you don't even have the understanding of why you're reacting the way you're reacting. Whereas if you're working to understand these parts of yourself, then you're less likely to be projecting onto people. Another benefit of doing the work, in this case shadow work, is improved relationships, because if you have a more whole understanding of yourself or an improved understanding of yourself, then it in turn improves the quality of the relationships in your life. In order to effectively handle situations outside yourself, you need to be whole within. So I think now we can get into how to identify your shadow self or how to do shadow work. I want to start by saying that if you are struggling with your mental health or if you are struggling with your self-esteem, then it may not be the best time to start shadow work because you could easily over-identify with your shadow self. And in the same breath, while you're doing shadow work, you should not disregard your strengths. It's all about balance. And again, this is a great time to, if you're choosing to do this, lean into your support systems. Like literally, you can straight up ask the people who provide support in your life if they can hold space for you. What type of space do you need them to hold for you? Do you need someone to just talk and vent as you process all these new discoveries? It's a great time to lean into these systems while doing shadow work, just so you're not getting too caught up in the negatives and you're being able to remain optimistic and with a fresh perspective on your journey. So please keep that in mind if you are taking the steps towards shadow work, or if you have already been doing it and find that you're struggling. So with that being said, the methods that I found around shadow work are all geared towards increased self-awareness, because that's the best way for you to did I just do that? That's the best way for you to be able to identify your shadow self. One easy and free method is journaling. What you can do is record both your negative and positive thoughts, feelings, and habits as a means to draw awareness to them. This is more of you taking record of your thoughts on a day-to-day basis, your habits on a day-to-day basis, and your feelings on a day-to-day basis. Both the good and the bad. Good and bad, because really, like, what's really bad? It's all part of the whole, right? And that'll help you become more aware of what's going on in your conscious and unconscious mind, because you'll be able to see what feelings are coming up on a day-to-day basis, what thoughts are consistently running through my mind. Another great way to do shadow work is to examine what you are consistently blaming others for. So it's like you using the world as a mirror to be able to identify your shadow self and get to see your shadow self. There's a quote that says, what we usually deny in ourselves, we see in others. So this would mean observing your emotional reactions to situations and to other people. You're reflecting on your interactions with others, maybe even journaling them, just to take note of what you observe about yourself in these situations. Okay, so let me give you guys an example to make it make a bit more sense and be maybe a bit more relatable. If you find that you get extremely irritated by someone's rudeness to you, then it's possible that you haven't owned your own rudeness. I know that sounds a bit weird, and I'm not saying that to say that, okay, the person wasn't rude to you. I'm saying that to say that if rudeness was not in your shadow self, then maybe someone else's rudeness wouldn't bother you as much. So that's how using the world as a mirror and observing your reactions, your emotional reactions, and overall reactions to people in certain situations can help you identify your shadow self. This requires you to be open-minded and receptive, because it's not so easy to accept parts of yourself that are not so pleasant and so perfect, and so positive. But by accepting these parts of yourself, then maybe the next time someone is rude to you, you won't have as strong of a reaction. Another way that you can get to know your shadow self is through meditation, because sitting in stillness and in your breath can help you form better self-awareness. And as I said, all these different methods are geared towards an improved or increased self-awareness. Those are pretty much all the free tools or methods that you can use. Everyone needs therapy, so it's no surprise that therapy is another way to identify your shadow self. Therapy creates a safe space where you can speak to someone who isn't literally invested in your life, and that allows for free-flowing conversations, which in turn allows for self-discovery. So there's different formats of therapy that can be used specifically for shadow work. I'm going to do my lashes off camera so I can do them really quick, and then I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. Lashes on, brows on. Now we can move on to my face. In my personal experience, journaling has been so major. I really enjoy having records of the patterns in my thoughts and in my reactions, to see how often certain feelings come up, how often I find myself having similar reactions to situations in life, seeing how often certain thoughts and feelings and what the repetitive patterns in my life are, and then being open to accepting the role that I have played in those cycles and those patterns. If you're watching this and you're like, okay, cool, I mean, sounds legit, but where do I even start? I would say the most important thing when it comes to shadow work is being honest with yourself. No one knows the real you, like you know the real you. It takes a lot of courage to honestly look at your attitudes and your habits and your behaviors, both the positive and the negative. It's easy to be like, oh, positive, I'm so good at this and I'm so great at this, but when it comes to negatives, it's not so easy to do that. So first things first, be honest with yourself. I think a hack for this part is remembering that all the rewards of doing the work will be worth the temporary discomfort. Remembering that as the whole you, there's still all the things to celebrate about yourself. It's not just, oh, all these bad things that you did. No, you're human. Like, we all have the positives and the negatives. You can't understand anything that you're not willing to accept or see for what it is. So, major. Other thing that I would say is self-compassion. Be a friend to yourself, support yourself how you would support a friend who is doing this. Another more practical tip that I would say, more practical, like action-based, try and keep a record of your journey. So this could be done by writing down any new discoveries about yourself. Another way that your records could come in handy is a way to write down the goals you have for yourself. And keeping a record, especially when things are happening in the moment, is super helpful because sometimes you feel like you're not really progressing, or you feel like you forget the point of why you're doing this whole thing. So having a record of things when the emotions are fresh and top of mind is so important. Okay, so I went ahead and did my lips off camera. I used the same exact combo from my date night get ready with me. So this is the final look. One of the realizations that led me to choosing to do this video is that you can't work towards self-improvement or self-development without coming across parts of yourself that are hard and difficult and maybe even disturbing to accept, and that's where shadow work comes in. So I really hope this video made sense and it could lead you onto the path of shadow work. If you're already doing it and you have more tips, please share them with us in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.